I'll start again. So again, thank you all so much for being here for this webinar, Building a Resilient EDD Workforce, a retrospective on the Collaborative Learning Group, and planning for the future. We all work in our EDDs and RDOs more broadly to build a resilient region. But it's also important that we as organizations are resilient. We have resilient funding streams, we have resilient staff, and the goal here is to really talk about how we can build resilient staff from the bottom up, from the entry level up to our executive directors and everywhere in between, so that our organizations themselves are able to respond to a changing world and to a changing region. This webinar is being offered as part of NADO's EDD CoP, the Economic Development Community of Practice, which we have in partnership with the Economic Development Administration. For more information on the EDD CoP, you can go to www.nado.org/EDDCOP. We also have a number of other resources through the EDD CoP. We have a number of webinars that we put on with regularity. We also have case studies, recordings of the webinars, reports, a whole range of resources on, both staffing issues for EDDs, SEDS. I know we actually had our SEDS peer exchange met today. And our collaborative learning group, which helped to spur this webinar, is also offered through the EDD CoP. So we have a number of resources that you can access both on the EDD CoP website, and then the sedscentral.com also has a number of important resources for your organizations. And I'm grateful to be joined today by Sam Miller and Leo Priddy, who will be joining us to talk about this. I'll introduce both Sam and Leo, and then also I'll introduce myself. I completely forgot. Hi, I'm Joe D'Antonio. I am a program manager at the National Association of Development Organizations. I manage the CLG program, the Collaborative Learning Group program, as well as a number of other programs. One of my primary focuses really is on how we can effectively bring in more people into our EDD communities as staff members, both retaining, attracting new staff, and making sure that we are developing our new staff well. So joined by Sam Miller, who is the Development Director for the Buckeye Hills Regional Council. She began as development director in 2021. Sam attended Ohio University in the E.W. Scripps School of Journalism and graduated in May of 2018 with a Bachelor of Science in Journalism, Strategic Communication. After graduation, Sam served as an AmeriCorps volunteer with Rural Action, where she worked as an entrepreneurial communities outreach and support specialist in the then Entrepreneurial Communities Program. After a term of service, Sam joined the staff of U.S. Senator Sherrod Brown as the Appalachian Regional Representative. During her time with Brown's office, she served as the primary point of contact and liaison between residents across 25 Appalachian Ohio counties that the senators and the senator's policy advisors. Then we're also joined by Leo Priddy. Leo is the Economic Development Planning Specialist for the New River Valley Regional Commission. Leo joined the commission in 2023. He previously served the region as a small business advisor for the Greater Roanoke and New River Valley SBDC, and has several years of experience with the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce. Leo's background lends to his passion of supporting his region, as his curiosity and resourcefulness provide his community with someone eager to help it thrive. And also, Leo is joining us as an alumni of the first cohort of the Collaborative Learning Group. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing now and talk a bit about sort of what the problem we're trying to solve here is, because this is something that I've always think is important whenever we're working on anything. Is starting first with problem definition. And it seems that the main issue facing a lot of EDDs and RDOs today is a quick turnover in their entry-level position. So a lot of EDDs, their entry-level position might look different. Some it's a program manager, a program associate, might be called planner one. I've seen across the industry a lot of different, sort of names for your entry-level position. But there's often a lot of turnover in that position. Now, this is to be expected. This is something that's true across all industries, that your lowest level position will have the most turnover, and turnover shrinks as you go up the ladder. And so that's nothing strange, but what it is causing in our industry is, as there is a lot of turnover in this entry level position, when it comes time to promote someone into that next level, there's no one to promote. Your entry level person might have only been there for a year, maybe two. And so that ends up with a gap there, which can lead to executive directors having to take on a much more direct role in supervising new staff. And then when it does come time for an executive director to retire or to move on to another opportunity, there's no one in that middle rung for them to pass the organization on to. Or if your organization has a wider variety of staff, when it comes time to replace a director, replace someone of a higher level position, there's no one to lean on in those lower positions to promote up. And that's caused by a number of factors. One, like I said, that's just in some ways the nature of the beast. But also salary is a key issue. And it's a little unique in our industry because we're all grant funded. What that leads to is sometimes there are limitations into what kind of salary you can offer to any position. And I've spoken to people about this, the issue of salary all over that. I don't think there's anyone who I've yet met who has said that they feel that their staff makes enough. I think everyone agrees they wish they could pay their staff more. They wish they could give more but they're limited by the granting and by kind of what they're able to provide. And so that if people want a salary increase, we need to increase our grants. We need to find more grants. The problem is, to find more grants, that means we have to do more stuff. And as I've spoken to a number of people in these kind of entry-level positions, a lot of them are finding themselves already overburdened by the size of the program that they have to run. That they might be administering $1 million in granting, a really large revolving loan fund, or something else, that they're already at capacity. And so for them to expand their job in order to gain higher salary seems impossible to them. It can also be impossible for the organization as a whole. There's only so much that any one of our organizations can do. Now, I've also looked at, there are certain ways that organizations are responding to this. They're responding to this through workplace flexibility, things like work from home days, competing with things like increased benefits. So, going for that higher level health plan, that might be a way to attract employees. Being more generous with off time. There are other ways that we can compete that aren't just salary. And then we're also, as an organization, NADO is looking into this. I want to highlight, just yesterday, we did a webinar about promoting workplace wellness. And that was based off of a report that was done by my colleague, Brett Schwartz, who many of you, I'm sure, know and have interacted with, about sort of how to build the dream team, attracting and nurturing an EDD staff. And another program that we wanted to run to try to, attract and nurture this staff was the Collaborative Learning Group, which was we did our first cohort last year, and we're about to launch our second cohort. More about that later. But it was a 7-month program targeting people who were new to EDD, so people who had been with their EDD for 2 years or less. And the goal was to, one, try to increase the knowledge base of that group. So we had a number of workshops that targeted a number of different areas that EDDs work on. We want to both deepen and widen the knowledge that people had. as is the nature of the beast, a lot of our organizations can get very siloed. Again, this is just true. Every industry deals with siloing there. That's nothing specific with us. But a lot of EDDs have an added issue in that because of the way they're funded, grants have to, be kept separate from each other, which means your departments get separated from each other, and that siloing, that natural siloing that everyone deals with, can increase. And so what we want to make sure is that we can break down those silos a little bit and make sure that people are able to see a wide variety of what their EDDs are doing. So we ran that cohort. We had 16 participants in our first one. And I mean, as the host of the program, I thought it went wonderfully. I don't know, Leo, if you say how the program went for you.
No, it was a great experience and part of why I'm on this call today.
Well, great. So, yeah, and another thing that we were hoping to do with the CLG was help to integrate these entry-level people into both the community of practice program, but also just sort of this unofficial community of practice we have with our EDDs, this community of professionals that we all have together. As organizations, we're often leaning on each other, looking for, as it goes, good artists make, great artists steal. We're always looking for what are other organizations doing that we can take advantage of, that we can repeat their successes. And so by integrating new staff into these programs or into this community early, we can hopefully keep them for longer and make sure that people see that there is a long future in being an employee of an EDD and being part of an economic development district. So I want to, that's a bit enough for me for now. I want to go ahead and turn first to Leo as sort of as a participant of the CLG, relatively new in your organization. I guess first and foremost, I would just love to hear sort of what brought you to working for an EDD in the first place? Why did you want to come to work for your organization?
Yeah, of course. Great question. And I told Joe about this ahead of time. Today I'll be speaking from the heart, but that doesn't mean that I need to put my heart on paper sometimes so that I can share all the great things with you all. But yeah, with that, my path to the EDD, you spoke about my background in communication studies. That makes me a jack of all trades, master of none sometimes. I was really interested in nonprofit community-based organization work. I did that for a couple of years, and I found myself actually working for the local chamber here in marketing and communications. I decided to make a shift and help. That was more organizational level based. I'm still helping individual businesses. And then I decided to take a shift to become an advisor with the Small Business Development Center. I loved doing that work. And I was really fulfilling. This position actually had opened up and I had sent it to a colleague and said like, hey, you should look at this. I think you'd be great for it. And they came back and they said, oh, I don't know, that doesn't sound interesting to me. And that like lit a fire because as I was looking through all the different aspects that this economic development planning specialist would get to do, I was like, but you get to do this, you get to support your community in this way and that way. And I really talked myself into applying for this position. And it was really a great fit. I'm a very values-driven person. Some of my values are collaboration, resourcefulness. I like having a destination postcard, having a clear vision for success and then working towards that piece. And all of those are found at the regional commission here. When I was actually preparing to interview originally, I like, you go to their websites. Let's see what's on there. The first thing that pops up was it said, in our VRC, strengthening the region through collaboration. And I was like, okay, yeah, it hit the nail right on the head. To me, again, with that being values driven, there's nothing more valuable than that. I get to do work like the SEDS, which we call the Regional Economic Strategy, and getting to be a part of bringing my own expertise to help facilitate that growth was the biggest driving factor for me joining this institution here.
Awesome, thank you. Actually, I'd love to bring Sam in as well to hear a little bit about what brought you to Buckeye Hills originally.
Yeah, throwing me a little bit of a curveball. I appreciate that. I was really drawn to Buckeye Hills because I really love the Appalachian region. Like, Leo, you talked a lot about your values and what's important to you. And my sense of place is what drives me to continue to do the work I do and to wake up every morning. So in my previous role, I got to see the amazing work that the local development districts and the economic development districts were doing. And I wanted to be so much more hands-on on the project side of it. So when the position opened here at Buckeye Hills, I immediately applied because I knew that I was going to be doing really great work with communities that I was born in, that I grew up in, and that I still choose to live in today. And I thoroughly don't regret a single day that I've spent here. It has been the best job I've ever had.
Glad to hear it. I know that, working at NADO, I see hearing a lot of what kind of drew me as well. And I know, kind of what both of you are saying about feeling very connected to your region. That's something that we heard a lot of in the CLG, and as I've talked to others, that most people really do see this this career as a way of helping their region, and that it really is about helping their region, their town, their communities. And I think that points to sort of what we as EDDs can offer to our employees, to the people who are part of organizations, is sort of an opportunity to play a really big role in helping your community. So Leo, I'd love to hear, we were talking about, turnover. I'd love to hear kind of what keeps you at your organization, what can, and sort of, both in the short term and kind of long term, what is it that you feel organizations can be putting in place to maintain people?
Of course. Going back to what we all just spoke about, that shared values piece is really important to me. Yes, if it's words on a paper, that's one thing. But getting to experiencing that from an organization culture is extremely important. We plan to implement a lot of big projects, but also we get into the nitty-gritty and we support each other. I had actually still actively working on right now, LMI, we have to knock doors, huge community. We needed to get some extra support, and we just sent out an email and said, hey, can we get some people to help knock some doors? So many people responded and said, how can I help? It's that ability to know that, yes, we're all working on these larger projects. We may be a lead of something, but we're also going to jump in and support each other on a moment's notice. So that, from an organizational standpoint, has been extremely valuable. And then, at least for me, I really thrive when I have the mentor-mentee relationship. The collaborative learning group, I think, was great for that. And then also organizationally, we have that as well. Speaking to mid-level management, but we have a handful that have been here for 10 plus years, and getting to meet with them and talk about what we're doing in our day-to-day, but also trying to think long-term has been extremely valuable. Also do that with newer staff as well that may have only been here for a year or two. When I first was starting, actually getting lunch with some of them, just saying, hey, what does your day really look like? And then also, like, as you're experiencing things, get to say, hey, is this what this is supposed to look like? Or am I experiencing reality? That really gave me a litmus and something to ground me here. Those two things have been really valuable. When you think about that long-term perspective, one, it is just the trust from the localities that we're serving. With some of these projects, we're helping them fill capacity for areas that they may not be able to do projects otherwise. They may be taking on something entirely new. You, in a sense, helping with them with that project may be entirely new to you. It's not lost on me the level of trust that they put in us to help guide them and support them through these large projects and these grant opportunities to make sure that they can continue to have their community, grow and thrive. And then again, just going to that long-term perspective, in my first week here, our executive director, Kevin Bird, he reiterated how much this is knowledge-based. He said, as you learn more, you'll be able to do more. And that work really has grown on itself. And then from that project perspective, something I'm working on, the fact that it could grow into something a year from now, 5 years from now, can be daunting, but it's also kind of exciting at the same time.
Awesome. Now, I'm glad to hear you talk about the kind of culture perspective, because I know that is really important for a lot of people who work at EDDs is the understanding that we're not just serving the community, we're in the community. That, kind of in a wholesome way, we're serving ourselves too. That, it's these aren't faraway towns. These are our towns, our counties, our region. And I think that does get built into the kind of organizational culture that, it's always us. And which leads to that very, supportive environment. And I think, without making it seem cynical, having a good company culture is probably the best retention strategy you can have. Just kind of creating a place where people want to come to work every day and want to be part of the mission. Yeah. So then, I want to talk a little bit about the collaborative learning group. I know that, I everyone who knows me is tired of hearing me talking about the CLG. It's one of my big topics. I was talking to my parents the other day, and I thought that, like, oh, I wonder if my parents actually know what I do. And they said, we know the CLG, yes. And I'm like, okay, well, that's coming back. So I'd love to hear, Leo, about your perspective on the CLG, kind of as a participant. Sam, I don't know if you want to pop
Yeah,
in.
I just want to say, as someone who was not eligible for the CLG, I do have a little bit of FOMO. I really wish that I could have been a part of it. It sounds amazing. It's exactly what I would have needed as a new employee to an EDD. So I just want to say, Leo, I am very jealous of you for having gone through it.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it was really a great experience. And again to reiterate, it was a pilot program when it started. So we're starting something brand new. We're gonna try it out, see how well it works for you all, and we're gonna continue to grow on it. Which I think is a phenomenal piece of the program is the fact that it's not gonna look the same year to year, and it shouldn't. It really should grow with the needs of its EDD staff and how it needs to better support them. When I first got the email that was like, here's this collaborative learning group for people that have only been there within 2 years, and I think, fresh into month 3. I just spent the last 3 months like watching videos in the SEDS Peer Exchange and all those others, or not the Peer Exchange, but the library for like SEDS 101 and all of that. And while helpful, it's like I would watch the videos and I would be like, okay, now I have to have conversation with myself about what was useful with that video. And what I really liked about the collaborative learning group was, again, it brought all of these people that were in a similar boat to me, newer in their journeys, to effectively learn with each other, learn from each other, and then eventually, connect with each other outside of that program. What's great is when we're going through it, with everyone's permission, Joe sent everyone's email to everyone, just so we were able to connect. This is my reminder saying out loud that there are a few people that I do need to follow up with, and I'm really excited and I'm thankful that I'm able to do so. Some of the program highlights, you spoke about the fact that it meets for that 7th month time, so it's not a huge time commitment. It meets twice a month. One of those focuses being on something education knowledge based. We were able to go through SEDS 101 with Brett Schwartz, and then David Ives, I believe, with EDA was the other speaker. We had wealth creation. Melissa Levy spoke there, or Levy, and those were great to have. And then the next time we met, it would be more of a connecting discussion dialogue experience. And there were times where, yes, we're busy and as we started our work here, and it would say in 5 minutes you have your collaborative learning group coming up, but it was really nice to actually take the time and have to slow down and to be able to spend more in this area for my own professional growth. um, Also, just some highlights that you may speak to later, or maybe this is just for the people in the program, but for those going through the CLG, you get to do icebreakers, and Joe creates some great icebreakers. The typical one, like the most interesting place you've been to, but also like what's your favorite Halloween candy? That made the connecting piece really easy and fun. And then what was it? Same bat channel, same bat
Oh,
time. Every week you would close with that, and it would be an old an old picture from the old Batman television show. And that just brought a little bit of your personality to it, but also allowed us to, kind of loosen up and remember that we're people too. So that was just another great connecting piece. And then the last thing I just want to throw out there is the capstone experience aspect of it. Getting everyone to share something that ideally either they worked on themselves or that's something that's happening in their organization. Uh, Sam Wessel with the North Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission had created this great entrepreneurial tool so that people in the area actually had a better idea of what are the resources in the area. And I share that today as a reminder that it was such a cool thing that he was able to work on and create that I'm really excited to follow up with him and say, how do we do that here?
Yeah. Great, thank you. I just put the CLG link in, and I'll share it again at the end. It's funny. This is a sort of secret trick for anyone who does any kind of group activity, whether it's a professional group or even something, kind of semi-professional. If you're the convener, always be willing to be a little louder, a little goofier, a little more, because it gives everyone else permission to engage, and that the kind of the icebreakers that everyone has heard are everyone's heard them. They have their canned answer. If you can make people think with an odd icebreaker, it gets people in. And I know that I'm glad you talk about kind of the community of the CLG. I know that that's something that is really important for the success of the CLG from my perspective. Is that it's not just something that was a one-time workshop, that it was kind of a continuous program, and something that you as an alumni of the program and that everyone who's kind of went through it will continue to be in contact with each other. And the capstones were all great. If you go to the CLG website, you can access those capstones. I think that's and it was important for me that you all have something kind of tangible to come out of the CLG with, so that you could point to and say, I did that. But then also that we can all, people who could not participate in the CLG can still benefit from it. And I'll plug our other peer exchanges. We have a number of different peer exchanges that we do through the COP. We have, I think it was our SEDS peer exchange, like I said, that just met today as well. And shortly I'll put a link in the chat as well that has all of those. Because we have, we've got the CLG, we have a number of others that are really valuable. So kind of, last question for you, Leo. I'm curious to hear kind of what is something that you feel an economic development district can do to, kind of keep staff, to be that resilient organization that maintains their staff, if salary is not an option, because obviously the immediate answer for everyone is I'd love more money, but that's not always an option. As I always remind people, I didn't get into nonprofit work for the money. But yeah, so I would love to hear kind of what what you think an executive and EDD executive or anyone can kind of bring to their organization to help maintain a strong staff.
So one thing to kind of highlight, and I spoke on this earlier, is to make sure there's a good blend of planning work that's happening. You may be the lead on a project, but you also might be supporting somewhere else. The fact that we're able to do that across the board with our staff helps us with a little bit of perspective, and then also just going back to that organizational culture of we're really ready to dive in and support one another. So I've been on the leads of projects, but I've also helped sit in and write minutes for something. I've also gotten to do some really unique things, like there was housing videos that they needed voiceover for. They're like, we need someone who can record for and I said, I have a face for radio, let's do this. And it was a really cool experience to be able to contribute to that project And then the crazy part was we were watching them in a staff meeting, some of the draft recordings, and it hit me in the moment that I was like, oh, these are going to live for years and people are going to hear me for better, for worse, but ideally sharing a good message of the importance of housing affordability, all those pieces. So having that diversity of work and also just that buy-in that everyone's supporting one another, that's a really huge thing. Uh, at our staff meetings, we try to do shares. I think when I first started, it used to be like each person would go and they would, share what's happening in their work program, and then after time, they took away that structure and made it a little bit more, popcorn share based, of just saying like, hey, if you have something great to share that's happening in your work program, share it. And then if you've seen or experienced something that someone else is, now is a great time to do that as well. Um, we are fortunate that, our localities are very thankful for the work that we do, but also we make sure internally that we're, celebrating that as much as possible.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you, Leo. I know that, yeah, I think company culture, again, it really is that the secret sauce that can really, keep an organization together. And also, yeah, celebrating wins. I think particularly because we're often dealing with these really long projects where, we're planting a seed that might take years, decades to fully flower. It's always important to celebrate the wins, when we see them as we see them. Yeah, to make sure that yeah, we can, keep ourselves, in the fight, I guess, because it can be difficult times, yeah, when you're just like, looking at the seed waiting for it to sprout. So yeah, thank you, Lynn. I'd love to Sam, bring you into this conversation, sort of, in your position as someone who is kind of overseeing new staff and is, just personally very dedicated as well to the work of bringing people into the EDD field. I would just, I guess, love to hear, as your, kind of, maybe the best way to do this is to start from the beginning and work our way to the end. And so, is there anything that you have implemented or that you think about at the interview stage that you use to try to identify not just who is talented, but also like who's a right fit for this organization, who's really gonna be good for us as an org?
Yeah, so I think even it starts when I start screening resumes that come in. I am a firm believer that you do not have to have a degree in planning or political science or one of the more traditional kind of backgrounds for this work to do this work. What's important to me at the end of the day is, can you write well, and are you familiar with the Appalachian region that we work in? Full transparency, right now, my team is predominantly communication studies majors and journalism majors. None of us have an AICP certification, but we have passion, and that is really, at the end of the day, what really sells me on whether or not I hire someone. I can teach you how to do this job. I can teach you how to write a plan and run a meeting and administer a project. I can't teach you to care about something. So when it gets to that interview phase and we are sitting down and talking about it, that is really what my program manager and I look for is, are you personable and are you passionate? Because while we do very, very important work, and I think any EDD recognizes that they have a crucial role in their region, we also understand that at the end of the day, we are a group of 5 people. And we do not take ourselves too seriously. So if someone comes into an interview and they're very buttoned up and they're singing all of their praises on all of these great things that they've done, that's amazing. But can I put you in a pair of jeans and work boots and send you to talk to my mayor that has a population of 300 people? Because they're not going to respond to that, what you're presenting to me today. I need to know what you can present in the future. So passion is really the most important thing throughout the entire the entire process. After I interview you and I make an offer in that interview stage and I onboard you, that's really where I am looking for, how can I make sure that you understand that this is a positive workplace, that we really are a team, and how can I highlight that work office culture? I really take the time to understand everyone's personalities on my team. I find time to meet with them one-on-one, to learn about their interests outside of work. Like, I have 7 hours of your day every day, but you are a whole person with those other hours in the week. What are you doing in that? Do we read the same books? Have we seen the same movies? Are you going to that community festival that's happening in Marietta this weekend? Like, those are things that I'm always trying to talk to my staff about, and I really prioritize them. I think that as a director and as a hiring manager, it's really easy to get bogged down in all of the things that we have to do. We have to have all these meetings every day. We have to send all these emails. We have to have all these conversations. But I communicate to my team that nothing is more important to me than them. I will always answer a phone call. I will always answer a text message. It's really important to me that my folks understand that they could do this work without me, but I cannot do this work without them. And so I reiterate that in the interview process and then again when I'm onboarding them. And as a result of that, I have a very small but mighty team of 5 people in development here at Buckeye Hills. And we all genuinely like each other. Like, we really like each other outside of work. We hang out outside of work. But also we recognize that we do really important work here. And just because we have fun and get along does not mean that we are not also absolute workhorses when it comes to it.
That's great to hear. Yeah, and I love you can't train someone to care. I think that's absolutely true. And I think you're right that really caring as kind of a company value, as an organizational value, is something that has to be lived at each level. Yeah, so as you were talking about, just like showing how much you care about your staff, that it bleeds into the work itself. That sort of, if the organization cares about me and cares about what I'm doing, then it is easier for me to care, to not just, kind of turn it off when I leave, that I care about the work I do kind of throughout. That's great. Yeah, and I think, I know it's so much work hard, play hard, but definitely a sense of, when people feel comfortable with their teams, they don't mind when it comes time to, I'm so sorry, it is Thursday, but I do need that extra hour from you because it's crunch time. We got to get it done. And sometimes, worse than anything, it's a Friday night, and I know you don't want to be here anymore, but it is crunch time. And that when you know that, when you can show people that you care about them, when you ask for things like that, people respond much better than, if you're uncaring, certainly.
100%. And I always say, like, we celebrate the small successes because sometimes we're going to have huge failures. Like, you're going to try something and it's not going to work. But I really want us to call on that energy and celebration we had when times were amazing and good, so that we can get through the less than fun times together too.
That's great. And also, acknowledging that that not everything, because I know that can often be kind of a killer of innovation, is if failure is seen as kind of the end all be all, that it means that people are less likely to try new things. So it's always good to kind of make space for experimentation, even if it might not have the outcome you wanted. So I'm then curious to hear from you. So let's say the interview's done, we've got our new hire. What what do you do, and what do you feel others can kind of replicate to be cultivating that new hire into a leader, and not just looking for that promotion, but also just a leader within the organization? Because I'm a firm believer that you can lead from any level. That leading is not a function of position; it's a function of attitude. So I kind of love to hear how you cultivate leadership.
Yeah, my number one piece of advice, and I know that we're not all looking for more meetings, but my team, our development team, meets for an hour every single week. And it's a standing meeting. And like you, I love an icebreaker. I am absolutely insufferable, and they are so ridiculous. Like, what is your favorite way to eat a potato? Like, that's a classic one. And people really think about it, and it seems like such a silly thing to do. And like, Joe, you mentioned this earlier, but it really lets people know that we are actually people outside of the office. Like, we have other lives going on. And I think that being able to like open up with their peers and with their team builds that sense of camaraderie that allows people to kind of figure out where they best fit in. Also, meeting weekly really helps folks understand what projects they're working on and builds that collaboration, which is so important to building that leadership down the road. In addition to that, I am a leader who really leads from a place of trust. I always assume everyone's best intention. And I think I've had some really, really bad bosses. I'll be very transparent, who've scrutinized like every mistake I've made and assumed that I intentionally made them. And as a boss and a leader, I really tried to absolutely just get rid of that. When my folks fall short for any reason, I take that as a mark against me. I did not prepare you enough to go into that situation to succeed. Or there is something that I should have trained you on better so that you knew when the report was due, or we should have had it's always on me as your leader because I'm the one who onboards you. And so I never look at mistakes from a place of lack of caring or laziness or just malicious. I really assume I assume the best in them and that they want to learn. We also really give people space to learn new programs and projects. Sure, the first couple of months, you have your training wheels on. My program manager and I are your guardrails. We're going to make sure that you get it. But we also start every single transition out with the fact that like you're going to get to a point where you no longer need us, and we are okay with that. We will trust you to tell us when you are ready to go off on your own and take the project. I don't want to micromanage you for the first 2 years of a project when actually you could have been doing this on your own 6 months earlier. So we really try to lead from a place of you're capable, you're smart, you're innovative, you're going to find a way to fix problems when you run into them, and we trust you to always make the best decision. And I think that, like, again, it seems kind of corny to say that is what I do, but it really goes a long way. Like, we have a very, very new young team. Like, I have been here 4 years. Over half of my team has been here less than me. Our longest serving employee on the development team has been here for 27 years. So like we have a big span of people who've been here less than a year and all the way up to 27 years. And none of us claim to have the best answer and the best solution for something. We really come at everything from a collaborative perspective. And I think that allows people to understand and see themselves as a leader and kind of figure out what their role and what their expertise is in that group setting. So I would really encourage people to do that on how can you better trust and allocate things to your teams as opposed to duplicating their work alongside them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I like the idea of, that it's that sort of the onboarding process is a runway. And the idea is at the end of the runway is that you're flying, not that you're stuck on the runway, because then you're a car, not a plane. But yeah, so I love, and yeah, definitely cultivating, like I just said, leadership at every level, and that leadership over your project, and then that when people, I find that when people ask for leaders, they get leaders, and if you don't ask for leaders, you won't get them. And so I definitely love hearing leading from a place of trust is very important. Yeah. Awesome. So I would love to know, as as sort of the goal of the CLG was to bring new people into the wider world of EDDs, because I know that can sometimes be difficult. I think one, it's a function of look, I'm learning, I'm still riding the bike with the training wheels. I can't go on the highway. That'll that won't end well for me. But it's not really like that, because I find that when you bring people into the wider community, you can accelerate that onboarding process, because they can learn from their peers more effectively. I know that, so one of the goals of CLG, bring people in, and part of the EDD CoP broadly is to bring people in. So I'd love to know kind of what you feel from both from the wider network perspective and from your perspective at the organizational level. How can we sort of, help support new and existing staffs and kind of bring them into this wider network?
Yeah, I think my biggest takeaway is to attend and allow your staff to attend all of the training and conference opportunities that your budgets allow. There have been so many trainings that my folks have gone to, and they come back and they're like, I had no idea that we weren't the only people facing that problem. And I'm like, yeah, that's why I take you to these things. So while NATO and the other organizations, I think you guys have amazing programs that already kind of build in that peer-to-peer exchange. I would encourage folks to look at ways to connect with one another outside of that. Like there, for example, at the NATO conference, I met someone who was doing a housing modification program for older adults. And after that NATO interaction, I messaged them outside of NATO and said, I want to learn more about this because I want to replicate that here. And my whole team got on a call with her and she shared all of her wisdom and mistakes that she made and how we could replicate it even better in my region. And I think making sure that you encourage those opportunities from a leadership perspective as an EDD was something that I really valued when I first started in this organization. And I really try to, support that in my team as well. So if you go to an event and you see an awesome presentation, let's have a follow-up conversation. Or, you're perusing someone's website and they have an amazing SEDS. Don't wait until that peer exchange meeting to talk about it. Send them the email now and let's talk about it. So I think that's a huge thing, is taking that initiative to do the networking and the peer exchange, even outside of the programs that already exist. The other thing that I think is really important, and I mentioned this before, is, those small achievements really help build the confidence of your team. And especially when I was new, having the little things that I was doing right congratulated and appreciated went a long way and helped me feel like I really understood what I was doing. To that end, I would really encourage leaders in EDDs to really think about who is doing the work and who should present that work. So I think oftentimes when we go to conferences, we see panels of directors talking about these amazing projects they did. And I don't want to, minimize the work that director may have done on that. But how much more impactful would it be to hear from that entry-level person on how they learned to do that project and what they learned as a new employee, as opposed to all of the amazing outcomes that came from this project. I think that I am okay being the least important person on my team. I am the director, but I am not the best person on my team. I'm not the most important person on my team. And I really would encourage other EDDs to look at their leadership structures like that as well. I have the title of director, but like I said, the work can go on without me. It cannot go on without my development specialists that are administering those projects. And any way that you can lift them up and give them the opportunity to present their successes, even to smaller groups at the local chamber or at the Kiwanis Club, or even all the way up to the main stage, NATO annual training conference, presenting your project, that helps them feel like they're doing something right. And what better way to build leadership and support them through public speaking? So that is kind of my 2 cents on it.
No, absolutely. Thank you. And I agree as well that certainly I think that far too often both the virtual option and the in-person option are put as competitive when they should be seen as complementary. That, the CLG was great, and then getting to meet people who had done the CLG at the annual training conference was also great. And that, like you said, you don't have to wait for the peer exchange. If you see something that you like, shoot an email, and then you kind of, then eventually when you happen to both be at a conference together, you can meet and talk in person. And that, see these things as complementary, not as replacements for one, or as competitors with one another. And I also agree as well, that when we can celebrate the successes of people, it's a way to make people feel as valuable as they are. And that, when we're presenting on something, whether it's at the annual training conference, a webinar, or whatever, that, when you can highlight, the people who've done the work, and often can answer some of those more technical questions, that can be even more valuable. So yeah, I love that. Thank you. And then, so sort of last question for you, sort of ask Leo the same one. I'm curious kind of if what, from your perspective, you can do as a hiring, as not just a hiring manager, but as the kind of the whole time manager, what you feel that you can do and what organizations broadly can do when they can't compete on the salary level to increase what they're giving to their staff to try to maintain.
Yeah. So I am very, very transparent about salaries with my team. I constantly tell them, I wish I could pay you Jeff Bezos money because that is what your work means to me. However, that's not a reality. I don't have billions of dollars that I can pay you annually for your work. So I really do try to find those periphery benefits. And some of the things that I'm going to talk through may not be something that you can do at your organization, but it's worth looking into. So Buckeye Hills is a pretty competitive place to work because we offset a lot of the insurance costs to the employee through our program. So if you have single coverage, it's just you. There is no cost to you as an employee to have that insurance coverage. So nothing comes out of your paycheck for you to have single coverage. Additionally, we also put money annually into a health savings account that helps our employees pay off the deductible from our high deductible plans. So, those are things we build into our budgets as fringe benefits that you all might want to think about if you're able to do that. And if you want any information, I'd be happy to share those with you. The other is we have a very generous leave package. So after your first 90 days, you get 5 days of annual leave. At your first year anniversary, you receive an additional 15 days. So within your first year at Buckeye Hills, you would have 20 days of annual leave. On top of that, you get 2 personal leave days that expire year over year, and you get 15 sick days annually as well that accrue throughout the year. So I always encourage my staff to take that time. That's why we give it to you. And that you cannot pour from an empty cup. So take your time, take your leave. If you came into the office, but you're having a bad brain day and you just can't focus anymore, leave at lunch, take a half day, take your personal leave. Like, if we will find ways to redesignate your work if it needs to be reassigned to someone, like your meetings. But my top priority is always taking care of my team and letting them know that, like, I don't just give that to you for it to accrue up into your account forever. I want you to use them. And the last thing that I think that I'm sure is talked about a lot, but I really think it just goes away, is that hybrid work schedule. Being able to work from home 2 days a week and come into the office 3 days a week, number one, helps me be competitive because it attracts people from across my region that aren't necessarily within reasonable driving range of my office. So, I have employees, I myself live an hour away from where my office is. But with the hybrid schedule, I'm able to still work here and do this work. And it betters my organization because we are more representative of the region we serve more broadly. Another thing is that I really try to respect people's work-life balance and encourage them to set boundaries for themselves. So we do a lot of flex time, meaning if you had an evening meeting that was 2 hours, I expect you to take 2 hours off on a Friday because you put in your time and I want you to go have fun with your family. We really try to find ways for people to set those hard boundaries. And, going back to what Leo said, if you have an evening meeting, but your kid has a dance recital, I'm not going to make you go to that meeting. We'll find someone else to go to it for you. Because at the end of the day, you're working for your family, you're working to sustain yourself. Your work should not take away from what you want to do outside of it. But in addition to that, I will say that it's so important to lead by example with these things. You can offer as many benefits as you want, but if you yourself as a director or a leader are not taking your leave and having a good work-life balance, but are preaching from the rooftops that your employees do, you're not really setting a very good example. And you're kind of setting the opposite precedent that what actually will get you ahead in your organization is if you hustle and you burn the candle at both ends. So again, I take my leave time. I'm very transparent with my folks that, like, if I'm on annual leave, I'm not checking my email. I'm not checking my Teams. And when they're on annual leave, I expect the same thing from them. If I always jokingly say, like, the only thing that matters to me when I'm on leave is, like, if one of our major funders pulls our funding out of the blue. That's the only reason that you guys should be calling me if I'm on annual leave. Of course, that's an extreme, but I really try to tell them, like, there's nothing that's so earth-shattering that you can't come back to in 5 days or come back to in 2 days. And if it is earth shattering, you have an amazing team of people around you who will pick the ball up and run with it.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree that, I think oftentimes we think of the fringe benefits as something that kind of the employees can take advantage of, which is, absolutely yes, but also that there are things that the organizations can take advantage of with these fringe benefits. Like, for example, if you have a hybrid work schedule, you have a greater commuting distance that you can pull from for staff, because it's driving 1 hour 3 days a week is a lot different than an hour 5 days a week. Or depending on the mix, you could have people who come in 1 day of the week, they come from 4 hours away, or whatever the case might be. And that's sort of always been a balance in EDDs, is though we represent a region, it's usually there's one office, and the office can't be regional. It's got to exist at a single location. Then maybe someday we'll have an RV EDD that moves around. But no, I think that's great as well. And I also leading by example, that really culture is not something that we can institute. It's something that grows naturally. And so the way you be a company that takes all, and that everyone takes their leave, is by having everyone take all their leave. And yet also that as well, that a lot of these are, it's about finding the right cocktail of these fringe benefits and other things that we can do that work for your organization. Because, different organizations are going to have different needs, different staffs that want different things. And, out of the box thinking is always encouraged with these kind of things that, a few years ago, hybrid work would have not been something that we all thought of it as possible, but things change. So I would love to kind of bring Leo back into this discussion and talk a little about sort of what both of you feel. We have this group that are attending this webinar and will be watching the recording. Kind of what can all of us do as members of this EDD community? What can we be doing to bring people in and retain staff and be supportive, during peer-to-peer learning sessions, during conferences? Kind of what can we be doing together? And I would, love to hear from either of you. I know, yeah.
Well, I'll just
Leo,
say
you
briefly.
go first because I've been talking.
Yeah, we'll get Leo in first.
And I'll just give it. Well, I think creating dialogue like this is really important. I know soon we're gonna hear from others on the call, ideally, because we're providing a lot of great things. But what are these other challenges that they're facing? Like you had said, Sam, when you face a challenge or see something great, are you making that call directly, or are you waiting? That's been reiterated a lot in my experience as a more entry-level person, is don't wait for the supervisor meeting to bring up the issue or to check in. If you need something, let's talk about it now. We have a really good open door policy. I happen to be shoehorned between my supervisor and the deputy executive director's right there. But if a door's open and I stand in front of it, I wait and then say, do you have a moment? They always answer with yes. And we really take the time to dive into things, then and there, make sure that we're getting the support that we need. For me, open dialogue and that openness piece is the most important piece, especially for your entry-level staff, to feel like they are able to get the support when they need it.
Yeah, I'll chime in and say that I think it's really important to find your mentors. And you talked a little bit about this, Leo. Your mentor doesn't have to be at your organization. It can be someone at another organization. Again, just like having that feedback group, and why I'm really jealous that I wasn't in CLG. I really feel like I would have benefited from a group of people who are all in a similar situation to me. But finding those at those organizations through NADO meetings, or even I am such a lurker. I will go on your organization's website. I'll see a project. I'll see whose name is on it, and I will send that person a message. Not everyone is as much of a lurker as I am. That's okay. But something else I would just add is I think that a lot of directors and managers kind of keep their staff in the dark on high level decisions. And I think that, I understand that, an entry level person can't help you set your budget every year. Like that is a high level decision made by leadership. But what I do is I sit down with my team and I tell them, here is what our budget looks like. Here is how we allocate that into the different parts of a budget, mileage, trainings, fringe benefits, salaries, all of that. So they have a really good understanding of where I have the flexibility to give them the equipment that they need or the trainings that they need, and where like the hard lines are. Like I can't put more into salary because it's unsustainable because of based on the funding. So I don't know if there's a way for NADO or some other organization to kind of offer some sort of training for in new and entry level positions to just like, what you need to know if you're trying to be a leader. Budgeting is really hard. Like understanding HR law, also not the easiest to understand. In any way that you can start building that knowledge base sooner rather than later, it might help build that gap of that middle leadership that you talked about before. And then one other thing I would say is just, it's really important to listen to feedback. And so I'm really excited to hear from everyone else on this call. Like drop things in the chat that are working for you, because it's really easy to say no to something. Like, we can't do that. We've never done that before. Well, that's not really a good reason. Like, can we try it? It's okay if we fail. What's the worst that can happen? So I really think just like building ways for these feedback loops through meetings like this, and even one-on-one, like learning those new ideas and trying to enact them in your organization, also will go a long way for people feeling like they're actually heard and that their opinion does matter and they can see the fruits of their labor in real time. That was a lot more talking, Leo. I'll let you weigh in again.
No, I have nothing else to add. That was great.
I agree, Sam, as well, that I think when you can let people know, obviously it can be difficult to bring everyone in on decisions because sometimes, you either they have to be made quickly or, there are just other factors that, you need a decider. But that when you can, after a decision has been made, talk through as to why it was made. One, it helps people to cultivate that leadership skill because someday, they will be the decider. They will be in a room where, everyone looks to them and says, okay, what do we do now? And if you can kind of look at what do other people do to make their decisions? What informs their decision making? It can help you cultivate that skill so that when it's your turn, you know what to look for. But that also, if something goes wrong, if and when, it's always an ironic thing to say in an organization of planners, plans are useless, but planning is essential. That when you can tell people, we made this decision because our objective is X. And so we're going to walk this road to get there. If in the middle of the road you find, oh no, the bridge is out, we can't get there, you can say, well, no, I know an alternate route that we can take. And that's true when you're driving. It's true in life that if you know where the goal was, even if you have to alter the way you thought you could get there, you can still make your goal. And so you get that by bringing people in. And then also it makes everyone involved in the decision process feel better. It makes everyone feel that, what, my voice was heard. I was brought in on this. I wasn't just being told, I was being kind of explained. And then that's always better. And then I would, lastly, would love to hear what you feel outside of the organizational level, what at the network level you feel we can do to cultivate leadership in all of our, staff here. What can we be doing to make sure that everyone feels that they can be a leader?
It's a great question. I think, and this is something I'm experiencing a little after being here for a year, is trying to actually going back to that long term. How do we plan for that? honestly, moving into this role in economic development, there's a little bit of ambiguity, but also openness to figure out, okay, how do we plan for those leadership steps? What are the tools that I need? What are the trainings that I need to be going to? It's great that that can be both something that I can look into myself from a self-discovery standpoint, but also have people that have gone from entry level or through those leadership levels to tell us, here's how I got there, here's what I would recommend for you, or again, also here's what I would not recommend you do. I think that would be extremely valuable, is to have a better picture, again, a clear vision of what that leadership steps and structure looks like, and getting to hear from others as to how to navigate that.
Yeah, I think that is spot on. Other things that I would kind of build off of is as an EDD, if your region office does not have an emerging leaders program, it's probably worthwhile for you to really advocate for your regional office to at least pilot or try an emerging leaders program with the help of NADO. I'll plug another one of your programs for you, Joe.
Go for it.
That is something that I'm in the Chicago region and we currently don't have. And I think that that is such an amazing program to help people that are in those entry level positions really get a handle on, like, what does economic development look like on a success, level? What is EDA looking for? What are the tools that you have access to? I know there are a lot of recurring meetings that happen quarterly with our regional offices, and we have our economic development representatives. But I think just even finding that cohort on a regional level could really go a long way with just understanding the trends of what economic resilience and recovery looks like from different parts of the region in different states. So that's something that I would scream from the rooftops, that I really think that every regional office should have that emerging leaders program, because that seems like such a valuable tool to cultivate that next level of leaders to lead these EDDs and lead them well. And the other thing I would just say is, and I know, Joe, you and I have talked about this a lot, is how can NATO highlight those people that are that are emerging leaders? So, the executive committee and the board of NATO is all executive directors. Is there a way that we can create a young professionals board or an emerging leaders board that feels like it can contribute to the organization and the direction it's going in a way that's meaningful, as opposed to just filling out the surveys and et cetera? So, I'm always looking for those ways of how can we bring people together to build off of each other's strengths and develop new ones. I think CLG is a great step in that. And I would say, like, please continue that forever and ever and ever. But, what about those people that are 2 years into their job, but less than 5? That's still someone who needs to be cultivated a little bit. And how can we, build out programming that's supporting those folks as well?
Yeah, absolutely. We're always, we definitely want to keep doing the CLG forever, but expand it as well. And you have my permission to plug as many NATO programs as you want. That is always, you can cut me off to do it. Do whatever. But no, thank you. But I agree as well that, yeah, that there's always room to expand, to make sure that we're bringing more people in. And I agree, the Emerging Leaders program really is a fantastic one, and definitely one that kind of I had in mind as I was making the CLG. Wonderful. So we have about 20 minutes left of our scheduled time. I'd love to make space to hear from all of you kind of in the audience, if anyone has questions, comments, any of the topics that we've been covering, if you have implemented certain things at your organization that you think would be valuable for everyone to hear. I would love to hear from anyone and everyone. Don't be shy. All are welcome. I should have done an icebreaker. That's the difference. I've become world famous for my icebreakers.
I would say, like, I've also gotten some direct messages since we've been sitting here on the thing too, and just like Even if you are just a little scared to unmute yourself, but you have a question, drop it in the chat. We can check
Yeah.
the chat.
Yeah. Yeah, and also, and as ever, I know my email is associated with this with this webinar. So I believe you'll all get my email, but please, if you have thoughts, if you have questions afterward, please feel free to shoot me an email. I think Leslie, I'm seeing your hand up.
Well, I felt kind of bad that nobody was saying anything, but no, as of I have couple new staff members, and I have to give kudos to NADO. You guys have made my job much easier. I encourage new staff to always look at the NADO website because you guys have a gazillion, resources up the wazoo, both for old staff such as me, but also for new staff. You give a very succinct background on what EDDs are, what we do. As a matter of fact, I have one of your documents that I send to new board members. It's for new staff members, but it gives enough information in the kind of information that our new board members would benefit from. So kudos to you, and I will always encourage new and existing staff to go and participate in webinars such as these and take advantage of any of your other resources. So that's my plug for you. How's that?
Perfect. Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome. Sure.
I appreciate it. Yeah, we do. We have a number of resources for both for the new staff, for existing staff that can also, as you said, be really valuable for board members. Because oftentimes, your board members need an onboarding of their own. Because many of them are coming from, they might be somewhat familiar with EDDs, or they might have no familiarity at all. And they might have, having heard stories of kind of new board members who did not realize that they were board members because they're board members by virtue of an elected office, and they did not realize that they might be the mayor of a town, but far more importantly, they are a board member of an EDD.
Well, and I don't think, and I know I've been in the EDD world for some years, but I know when I entered into the EDD realm, I thought I knew what an EDD was. And, that was kind of scary. So that is, you can only sell a product that you know things about. And so that's why it's so critical for both new staff and people that are working on behalf of our organization to know really what we do, and what our guardrails are, when we need to partner with other people. So and you guys do such a fantastic job of sharing that information. I steal shamelessly from you all the time. So thank you.
Absolutely. I always say, good artists make, great artists steal. That's the goal with any good resource. I'm seeing Caroline, I'm seeing you've got a hand up.
Yes, sir. Hello, everyone. Hey, great webinar. I just had a quick question. So y'all talked a little bit about the onboarding process, and I was curious if y'all could share how you felt the onboarding process more contributed to a resilient workforce, and if there's any changes you've made to that process or that you'd like to make in order to keep staff or, give more tools for success.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I can take a stab at this. So we actually just did an overhaul of our onboarding process for new staff, I think within the last year or so. So the onboarding that I went through is not the current one that folks go through, but I'm sure like a lot of our organization wears a lot of hats. We are an area agency on aging. We're a rural transportation planning organization. So a big part of our onboarding process is having folks understand that they are a piece of a bigger puzzle that is Buckeye Hills. So as part of their onboarding, they do have to go and they have to talk to all of the directors in the organization to understand, what that person does and how it connects to the work that they do in their new position. There also is a lot of kind of like the traditional, HR onboarding stuff, the trainings on, anti-sexual harassment and all of the really fun things. But something that I always do too as part of my onboarding is, and this seems so silly, but I think it really does help people feel like they're a part of the team, is like that person's first day, I have a team lunch that I take everyone out to lunch, and then I personally foot the bill. I don't reimburse that to my organization. I, as a director, pay for it. I understand not everyone is in that position. I certainly am not played glamorously. I don't want to put up that facade that I am, but I think it's important to show people that you appreciate them. And sometimes it is just covering a meal, as small as that sounds sometimes. But people always talk back to the fact, like, I love, can we go back to that restaurant we went to on my first day? Like, it was so fun. And then you're just building that relationship of making people feel like they have connections. And yeah, I think a lot of good connections happen over food.
Absolutely. Now, Lee, if you have anything you want to add to that.
Not a whole lot. I'm glad that there was a focus on how do you balance both the like HR, like here's what's in the orientation book aspect versus here's the personable aspect. Yes, it does speak a little bit to that culture again, but it's just like set the stage for success. Make sure that you're doing both of those pieces fully to make sure that that person actually has the best experience as they start. And again, it's reiterated to me. It was early on, and then daily even here is. Don't wait to have the conversation. That again, open door, open dialogue really has made this a much more manageable situation for me, especially in that onboarding process.
Yeah, and I'll also say that I think sometimes, because often it's a one person show, you might not have a designated HR director and you're onboarding people yourself. I think sometimes the instinct is to send them a bunch of links and tell them to read everything for the first couple of weeks. And that's fine. But I have found that I really am able to retain the most people when I send them a link and then I set a time for us to talk about what they learned. Or, I already made them a 1-page sheet on everything EDA that we do. And instead of you going to EDA's website and reading all of the things, this will point you in the right direction. So I think, there's value in just letting people be set free and to read all the plans that you've done and, read all of the background on the agencies you work with. But it's really overwhelming. Like, we do a lot of stuff. And as much as you can make that a guided process as possible, I think really makes a world of difference. Again, they're not feeling isolated because they're not just, in their office reading by themselves. You're learning how they digest information. They're learning how you digest information. It just helps you work better together as a team too, if it's more of a guided, like, co-sharing experience when you are, go off and read this website and then come back to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think something that Sandy touched on, that all of our organizations do so much that, whether officially you have multiple designations as the EDD and the area agency and agencying and all of those different things, even if it's an organization with just a single, you're just an EDD, you're never just an EDD. There's always so much more that goes under that label. And making sure that people know that there is there are no dumb questions, particularly at the beginning, but even years down the road. And it can be really valuable to have, when people are new, make sure that they meet with as many members of the staff as possible, so that when they are hit with something they don't know, when their economic development work bleeds into transportation a little or bleeds into the aging work a little, they don't, and they're worried, oh no, I have a really dumb question and I'm so nervous to email, Jane Smith, who I've never spoken to before. Instead, it's Jane, who I had that meeting with, and she was really nice, and I'm sure that there won't be a problem when I ask my question. That can really help, prevent that siloing and, you know, prevent mistakes from, you know, happening in the first place, because there's nothing worse than, you know, being afraid to ask the question, so you don't ask the question, so you don't know, and you go off blind. And, you know, sometimes it works out, but oftentimes it doesn't. Are there any other? Oh, Leon, so yeah,
I was just going to bring up really quick. You brought up a really good point. I'm not sure how much I touched on it earlier,
please.
But from a commission standpoint, we typically are invited to go to the next commission meeting. So, you know, it's like, here's the new hire, introduce, you know, say your name, all that other stuff. And then, you know, we're encouraged to attend, you know, throughout the year, 3 to 4 meetings. So typically one a quarter, in addition to the fact that we may be presenting at one of those ourselves. And that's great, again, for the familiarity for both staff perspective and the commission perspective. It just helps lower the barriers. The fact that you're introduced early. And then again, when it comes for them to vote on the sets or something else, they have a name to a face, and they trust the work that they've seen prior to. It's not the first time they're seeing you and saying, please approve this document that I helped facilitate. So that's been extremely valuable as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think right off of that too, Leo, something that we do is we build in a part of our executive committee meetings, or at least we did, and then it kind of fell off, but we're trying to do it again. It's just like having staff that isn't directors just come and speak about what they do. Like, not so it's necessarily like, I need you to pass this resolution. It's just like, hey, did you know that we run this senior farmers market program? And here's how successful it is. And here's how many vouchers we gave out last year. And if you have any questions, I'm your gal. I think it's just so valuable for our folks to understand that, like, again, you don't always have to go to the director to get the question. Because I think a lot of, at least in my organization, a lot of my executive committee members come to me with questions about programs and projects. And I'm like, I'm going to have you go to Emma on that one because she knows all things ARC, or I'm going to have you go to Michelle on that one because she knows everything. So I think that just getting that FaceTime, even in just like an informational way, just present 3 slides. Again, you're building that leadership of that, you know, more entry level, middle level employee, but you're also getting that information to the people who need it.
Yeah. Absolutely. There's also, I mean, whenever you're onboarding a new person, it's a great time as an organization to just have everyone come together and touch base and have an excuse to kind of brag to your board about new things, have, you know, an excuse to have the whole org come together on something that could be really valuable. So we're coming up on our time here in just a little bit. I want to take, you know, one last minute here to plug the CLG again more directly. Let me make sure I'm sharing my screen. Okay. Yes. Perfect. I always do this. All right, here we go. So the CLG applications are due January 31st. So next Friday, close of business. So, you know, you've got another week. The more time you put them in, the better. You know, we review all, it's not a rolling application. We don't review any of them until after the 31st. But get it in early, then it's done, and you can just, you know, celebrate. And then our first meeting will be on March the 26th. If you go on to the CLG website, I have a QR code, so if that's easier for you, you can go and scan that now, or go to nado.org/CLG. We already have all of the dates picked out. Like Leo said, they happen twice a month. The first one is usually a workshop that is a skills building workshop or a knowledge building workshop. And then the second one is more kind of a cohort building workshop where we're trying to kind of hear from and build the connections with everyone who's part of the program. Yeah, we can also on the CLG website. So there's, you know, more information on the program itself, all of the dates for the upcoming one, the application itself. There's a link on that website. We do the application through SurveyMonkey. And then also we have the bios and case studies that each of our previous CLGers did. And those case studies are wonderful resources in and of themselves. I want to give, you know, you, if you're interested in participating in the CLG, sort of kind of what you're signing up for. But also if you're looking for case studies on a variety of topics, they're really wonderful case studies. I would recommend everyone take a look at them. Beyond that, I think that's all from me. I want to thank all of you so much for taking the time to be with us. I know everyone's busy, and I really appreciate you, coming with us, learning, asking some questions. This was recorded. The recording will be posted, and I believe you'll all get it directly to your email as well as registrants. And then, my final plug. If you're able to apply for the CLG, I would say tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell everybody. Everyone can benefit from the CLG. And so thank you all so much, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Leo. Y'all
Thank
are
you very
amazing.
much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.